On March 1, 2025, Messiah Nantwi, a 22-year-old inmate at Mid-State Correctional Facility in Marcy, New York, died after being brutally beaten by prison guards. The assault began in his cell and continued even after he was handcuffed and unresponsive, including in the infirmary. An autopsy revealed that Nantwi died from massive head trauma and multiple injuries sustained during the assault. According to prosecutors, after the initial confrontation, Nantwi was forcibly restrained by the officers, who then proceeded to beat him. The assault continued even after Nantwi had been handcuffed and was no longer resisting. The guards reportedly continued the attack in the prison's infirmary, where Nantwi was taken after losing consciousness. Medical reports indicated that Nantwi suffered severe trauma, including multiple contusions and fractures to his skull, which ultimately led to his death. Nantwi had been incarcerated at Mid-State Correctional Facility for charges related to robbery and assault. Details regarding the specific events that led to his arrest have not been entirely clarified in the context of the case. However, his arrest was part of a larger pattern of incarceration for nonviolent offenses, often involving minor infractions that spiraled out of control within the prison system. What is particularly alarming and deeply troubling about this case is that it wasn't isolated. Just months earlier, another nonviolent individual, Robert Brooks, also died under suspicious circumstances at Marcy Correctional Facility, directly across the street from where Nantwi was killed. Brooks, like Nantwi, was black and incarcerated on nonviolent charges. His death also involved allegations of excessive force by correctional officers, and after further investigation, it was officially ruled a homicide. Following his death, an investigation was launched, and the actions of the involved officers came under intense scrutiny. The New York State Police conducted an extensive review of the incident, leading to the indictment of 10 correctional officers on charges related to the death. 2 officers, Jonah Levi and Caleb Blair, were indicted on charges of second-degree murder, while others faced various charges such as first-degree and second-degree manslaughter, conspiracy, gang assault, and evidence tampering. Prosecutors allege that after the assault, several officers tried to cover up their actions by filing false reports, cleaning up evidence, and planting a makeshift weapon in Nantwi's cell to falsely suggest that he had been carrying a weapon at the time of the altercation.
We want to get to a developing story that we are following now, as 10 New York prison guards have been charged in connection with the fatal beating of a 22-year-old inmate last month, including 2 charged with murder. It's the second time a group of correctional officers in that state has been indicted for a death behind bars this year. We are hearing from the state attorney right now, providing more information. So let's pop up the audio and listen in.
All right, good afternoon. Everybody all set? Good afternoon. My name is Bill Fitzpatrick. I am the Onondaga County elected DA, and I have been appointed special prosecutor by the Attorney General Letitia James to investigate the death of Messiah Nantwi, which, as you know, occurred on March 1st of this year. Today, an Oneida County grand jury reported out a single indictment charging 10 current and former corrections officers with various crimes relating to the death of Mr. Nantwi. 6 other corrections officers who have not appeared in court yet have agreed to cooperate with the special prosecutor, and I have made deals with them. 2 of them will be pleading to felonies, and 4 of them will be pleading to various misdemeanors. All defendants, even those that I've made deals with, are entitled to the presumption of innocence. An indictment is only an indictment. It's a set of allegations, and there's a lot of work yet to be done in this particular case. I'd like to summarize for you what is in the public record regarding the indictment as to the events of Saturday, March 1st of this year. As you all know, and as Commissioner Marticello is acutely aware, at that time there was a corrections officer strike going on. There's also an influx of National Guardsmen that were present at Mid-State and several other correctional facilities throughout the state of New York. At approximately 10:55 a.m. that morning, the people are able to show that all was well in Building 21 where Mr. Nantwi resided. I know that because the corrections officer who was assigned to do rounds on that occasion walked past his room at approximately 10:55 a.m. and there was nothing going on. At about 10:58 a.m., a call went out over the radio at the facility calling for backup. The evidence will show that when the CERT team responded and got there at approximately 11 a.m., there was virtually no or minimal effort to determine what was the need for the backup, what the nature of the call was. No weapons were observed and no assaultive behavior was observed by the CERT team members as they entered Building 21. A non-CERT team member, a corrections officer, recorded the last video of Mr. Nantwi before the alleged assault, and he was no longer able to communicate. That corrections officer exited the room and various CERT team members entered. None of them, to our knowledge at this point, were wearing mandated body-worn cameras. Approximately 4.5 minutes later, Mr. Nantwi is removed from his room and taken down 3 sets of stairs where it is alleged by the grand jury that an additional assault occurred in the stairwell. Handcuffed and taken to the infirmary and laid on the floor in a holding cell, an additional assault is alleged to have occurred by the grand jury. Fragments of Mr. Nantwi's entrance into the infirmary are captured on one corrections officer's body-worn camera. It is not a continuing flow, but there are enough indications to name and identify the individuals involved and some of the things that occurred. Many other corrections officers, apparently intentionally, either turned off their cameras, placed them in an area of concealment, or simply looked the other way. Kunkel ambulance personnel responded to the infirmary following a call at 11:36 a.m. At approximately 11:47 a.m., and at that point detected no signs of life in Mr. Nantwi. It was determined by the Onondaga County medical examiner that Mr. Nantwi died from traumatic brain injuries as a result of violent blows to his head, as well as at least 69 other serious blows about his body. No COs required any medical intervention. I was appointed special prosecutor shortly after the incident and assisted by my own investigative team, officials from the Department of Corrections and Community Service, and the New York State Police. We began an investigation and wanted to assist the grand jury in answering the following questions. Who, if anyone, was justified in using physical force against Mr. Nantwi? 2, if initial force was justified, did it remain appropriate and proportionate to the danger presented, if any, throughout the encounter? And did it follow DOC's protocols? And 3rd, were efforts made to thwart my investigation by deception, concealment, or destruction? The grand jury has answered those questions as follows. The first count charges 2 individuals, corrections officers Jonah Levy and Caleb Blair, with depraved mind murder. Not an intentional murder, but a murder so depraved and so wanton and disregarding of human life that New York law allows it to rise to the level of intentional murder. They are charged based on their actions, not only in Mr. Nantwi's room, but also in the stairwell and in the infirmary. Secondly, the grand jury has returned charges of manslaughter in the 1st degree, intent to cause serious physical injury resulting in death. Those corrections officers are again Levi and Blair, and additionally Thomas Eck, Craig Klemek, and Daniel Berger. They are also charged with gang assault in the 1st degree, intent to cause serious physical injury, and doing so, a Class B violent felony. Same individuals, Levy, Blair, Eck, Klemek, and Berger. Gang assault in the 2nd degree, intent to cause simply physical injury and resulting in serious physical injury. And this time the same individuals in addition to Sergeant Francis Chandler. Manslaughter in the 2nd degree has been charged against Sergeants David Ferrone and Francis Chandler. The theory of prosecution on that count is that these 2 sergeants in a supervisory role in Mr. Nantwi's room did absolutely nothing to stop the beating that he was enduring and offered absolutely no assistance to him, completely contrary to Doc's protocols and guidelines. Then the grand jury began to focus on the cover-up, as amateurish and ineffective as it was. In the sixth count, David Ferrone, Francis Chandler, Jonah Levy, Caleb Blair, Thomas Eck, Nicholas Vitale, Daniel Berger, and Craig Klemek are charged with conspiracy to offer a false instrument for filing. Docs has a form known as 2104A, which requires the individual corrections officer who was present to indicate who was present at the scene, what force was used by the author of the report, and what force was witnessed by the author of the report. In addition to charging conspiracy, the grand jury must also allege overt acts. In this case, the overt acts alleged are, number one, that every single use of force reported by these individuals omitted two people, Sergeant Chandler and Corrections Officer Levi, and that was done intentionally. The second overt act, it is alleged that the reports were in fact filed and known to be false when they were filed. And the third overt act alleged is that on the following morning, at a diner called Raspberries in Oneida County, all of the co-conspirators met and agreed to continue with the story that everything they did was completely proper. David Ferrone, Francis Chandler, and Thomas Eck are also charged with conspiracy and conspiracy to tamper with physical evidence. These three individuals, along with others known to the grand jury, allegedly concocted a scheme to posthumously plant a weapon in Mr. Nantwi's room. The overt acts alleged in favor of that conspiracy, alleged overt act number one, is that the weapon itself was found earlier that day in a completely unrelated incident. The second overt act, a body-worn camera intentionally hung in a men's room at the infirmary of Mid-State, caught two of the co-conspirators discussing the conspiracy to plant the weapon, again posthumously, on Mr. Nantwi. And the third overt act alleged is that defendant Chandler, actually in front of a group of all of the corrections officers, asked for a volunteer to have someone come forward and say that it was he that discovered the weapon. And it is alleged that that quote-unquote volunteer, it was Thomas Eck. Mr. Slauson, Corrections Officer Donald Slauson, is charged with tampering with physical evidence, and it is alleged that he had cleaned up the holding cell of all of Mr. Nantwi's blood over at the infirmary. And the final defendant is Sergeant Michael Eifert. He is charged, again, with offering a false instrument for filing, allegedly falsely asserting that he had no opportunity to look into the room and, in fact, saw no use of physical force against Mr. Nantwi. I want to thank the staff. My office, probably 10% of my office has been involved in corrections officers allegedly committing homicides over the last 2 months. And I'm joined here with Senior Assistant DA Sarah Fitzpatrick and Senior Assistant DA Alphonse Williams, who have done an incredible job in helping me present this evidence to a grand jury. I also am joined here today by Ruben Lindo and the Reverend Kevin McCall, who are both individuals who have supported me throughout my endeavors in an effort to get justice, not only for Mr. Brooks, but for Mr. Nantwi as well. I don't believe that anybody from Mr. Nantwi's family is here. The only individual from his family that I've spoken to is through his attorney, his dad, and I understand that his dad is not in the greatest of physical shape and apparently was unable to travel here today. I also want to thank Troopers Tim Doherty, Bill Casey, Tom Quilter, Nenny Doherty, Andy Wilmot, and if I may reserve a special spot for Olivia Tabor, who have been just incredible in helping me present this case.
All right, what you're listening to right there is a news conference underway. This is with William Fitzpatrick. He is the district attorney who is serving as special prosecutor in this case. But once again, 10 prison guards now charged in connection with the death of that inmate. 2 of them actually charged with murder.
Judge, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Michael Kazmarek appearing on behalf of Thomas Eck.
All right, just come up right to that microphone just so we can hear you. This is a matter of the people of the state of New York against Thomas Eck under indictment I-2025-090. Mr. Eck, the United County Grand Jury has returned an indictment against you. That indictment charges you with manslaughter in the first degree, gang assault in the first degree, gang assault in the second degree, 2 counts of conspiracy in the 5th degree, offering a false instrument for filing in the first degree, and tampering with physical evidence. In regards to this indictment, you have the right to be represented by an attorney, and Mr. Kazmarek, you're going to represent Mr. Eck on this matter.
I am, Your Honor.
You have a right to a trial by jury. You have a right to testify at that trial if you so choose. Ms. Patrick, if you'd like to arraign the defendant, you may arraign.
Pursuant to indictment number I-2025-090-1 through 10, the people of the state of New York versus Thomas Eck. The grand jury of the county of Oneida by this indictment accuses Thomas Eck of the felony crime of manslaughter in the first degree in violation of section 125.20 subsection 1 of the penal law of the state of New York. Of this 11-count indictment, 7 of the counts apply to this defendant. Does counsel waive further reading?
Judge, we waive further reading, acknowledge receipt of the indictment as well as the people's notices pursuant to section 71030, enter a not guilty plea on behalf of Mr. Eck to each count.
A not guilty plea will be entered on your client's behalf. Mr. Kazmarek and Mr. Eck, I'm going to adjourn your case until May 22nd at 9:30 in the morning for the VA's office to provide you with a pretrial offer and report on that offer. If the offer is not acceptable at that time, there will be a motion scheduled at that time. At this point, Mr. Fitzpatrick, do you have any recommendations as to bail?
Yes, Judge. Given the charges that this defendant is facing and the potential incarceration exposure should he be found guilty of them, thus increasing the risk of flight, the people would be asking for bail in the amount of $100,000 cash, $200,000 bond, $500,000 partially secured bond.
And Mr. Kazmarek, would you like to be heard?
Judge, I would. Judge, Mr. Eck is a lifelong resident of Oneida County. He has family here. His mother and father, as well as one of his siblings, reside in the county. He is a graduate of St. John Fisher University. He had been working for the Department of Corrections for about 8 years. Judge, I'd note that he has no arrests or convictions, as well as no disciplinary actions relative to his employment with the state. Judge, I'd also note that Mr. Eck voluntarily appeared for 2 separate interviews. He appeared here voluntarily this afternoon. He retained my services prior to appearing here. I'd also note, Judge, that after he was suspended by the Department of Corrections, he promptly went out and found gainful employment. He has a child, a son, that he supports financially that relies upon him. Mr. Eck and I have had many discussions about the facts and circumstances surrounding his case. I can assure the court that he is resolved to answer these charges in clear as day. Judge, I ask that if the court's inclined to set bail, that it be set to $10,000 cash, $20,000 bond, $30,000 partial secured bond.
Now, you listen to arguments of counsel and look at the factors set out in CPL 510.10 subdivision 1. For the record, the defendant, the charges he is facing do have a maximum penalty of up to 25 years in state prison, and the other factor is that this crime did cause harm to an individual that is identified. So with those arguments in mind, the court will set bail in the amount of $75,000 cash, $200,000 bond.
Following the death of Messiah Nantwi at Mid-State Correctional Facility, New York prison officials have taken disciplinary actions against several staff members. As of the latest reports, 11 correctional officers have been suspended without pay in connection to the incident. The officers suspended without pay are Joshua Bartlett, Caleb Blair, Dean Cross, Thomas Eck, Craig Klemick, Zachary Lallier, Nathan Palmer, Nicholas Vitale, Frank Chandler Jr., Sergeant, Michael Iffert, Sergeant, Donald Slauson, Sergeant. Several officers and sergeants have resigned in connection with the investigation into the death of Messiah Nantwi at Mid-State Correctional Facility. Among those who stepped down are Daniel Berger, Frank Jacobs, and Adam Joseph. all correctional officers stationed at Mid-State. Also included is Jonah Levi, a key figure in the case who has been indicted for second-degree murder in Nantwi's death. From nearby Marcy Correctional Facility, Tristan Shepard, another correctional officer, also resigned. Additionally, 2 recently appointed sergeants, David Ferrone and Ryan Russell, submitted their resignations amid the ongoing scrutiny and legal fallout. Messiah Nantwi's death is not an isolated tragedy. It is the brutal result of how the American prison system continues to treat nonviolent individuals, especially young black men and boys. For decades, black people have been disproportionately targeted, abused, and dehumanized behind bars, often silenced by a system designed to protect its own rather than pursue justice. Nantwi's life was taken by those who were entrusted with care, not cruelty, and yet his story echoes a long legacy of state-sanctioned violence. This case doesn't just highlight one incident, it exposes a deeply rooted crisis. It reveals how correctional officers can carry out acts of unimaginable brutality and conspire to erase the truth, and how prisons enable it by covering up abuse, falsifying reports, and shielding perpetrators. Enough is enough. We can no longer accept silence, delay, or denial. It is time to stand up, speak out, and demand accountability. It is time to hold the system responsible for the generations of harm inflicted on black communities. Justice for Messiah Nantwi means justice for every black boy and man who's been beaten, buried, and forgotten behind concrete walls. It's been too long. The time for change is now.